Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I've put together a collection of 5 DIY Mother's Day gift ideas. Our next project is this set of scales. Now these are not vintage and they looked way too new and cold to me, so I'm going to give them a makeover. I'm going to give this set of scales 2 coats of Rust-Oleum's cream spray paint. I went really light with each coat so that I had minimal chance of drips, and I have already taped off the face of the scales as well with masking tape. I'm going to paint the entire thing, and then I'm also going to be painting the bowl that sits on top. Some of you may be thinking, oh my gosh, why is she doing this? But honestly, this is going to be a really fresh new look for these scales, and it's not going to affect the use of them either. So now that my spray paint is all dry, I've come in the next day and I'm going to take off the masking tape from the front of the scales, and I'm very carefully doing that. Now there were a few spots where there was a little bit of the paint that bled through. I'm not too worried. I'll scrape off as much as I can, but I don't think it will be super noticeable. I'm then going to be using IOD's new Elysium Transfer. This is an absolutely gorgeous design with so many lovely florals, but don't think that you have to use it in one big design. It does come with instructions to use it like that. It can be added together, but I'm going to pull it apart and just use what I want. I'm going to select some florals to put on the side of my scale. So you can see I'm just sort of laying it up against the area where I think that I might want to put it. While I'm working out what part of the design I want to use, I'm thinking about scale. I feel like these larger flowers would be a little bit too much on this set of scales, but these smaller flowers with the text I felt would go perfect. My first step is to remove some of the excess sections down the bottom. It's just making it a little bit hard for me to visualize how much I am going to need to cut off, and then I'm going to crease the areas where I'm going to need to cut. Now the lines are going to be really helpful here, so I've creased the area where I'm going to trim, and I'm just going to work in sections to make sure that I don't cut off an area that I wanted to keep. It wouldn't be too much of a big deal if I did, but it's still better to just go slow when you're doing this. So again, I'm just creasing any of the areas where I think that I'm going to need to cut. If there's overlapping flowers, but I think I might be able to actually bend them around and use them, you'll see that I do trim some of it off, but some of them I leave on. So here I thought that it might be nice to wrap around the florals up the top, but it's a bit tricky to work with those at the moment, so I'm going to trim them off, and then I can always come back and reposition them wherever I want them to go. Now that I have my transfer cut to size, I can peel the backing off and position it where I want it to be and get started. So I'm going to press down, and then once I have it down, I'm going to use the transfer stick and I'm going to go around the outside first. There is a little bit of an indentation around the outside, so I'm just making sure that it's stuck well to that, and particularly around the bottoms. And you can see I just had to do a little bit of trimming there just to get that transfer to bend around the corner a little bit. These are very flexible, but it can be a good idea to put a little cut wherever you're having trouble getting your transfer to go around. So I'm just going to work my way across this transfer, and you can see I'm lifting it as I'm rubbing it, and anywhere that something isn't releasing, I'm just putting it back down and then rubbing again. These are really very easy to use. For the top section, I've repositioned my scales and I'm bending the transfer over. I'm holding it down firmly with one hand and then rubbing it down with the other. I don't want that transfer to come away before I've completely rubbed and transferred that image. So definitely go slow if you're going around a corner. Once I have the transfer down, I'm going to rub and burnish it with the carrier sheet. Now I need to work out my design for the other side, so I'm going to position that transfer where I think I'm going to want to cut, and I'm going to repeat the same steps as previous. I'm going to crease where I want to cut, checking each time to make sure that I have the correct spot to cut, and then very carefully cutting out my design. Once I have my transfer cut to side, I can start on the other side here, and I can very carefully lay my transfer where I want it to go and repeat the same process as before, rubbing and burnishing the design down. These are a very easy way to add a pop of color or typography to most surfaces. I would test your surface if you're unsure, test a small little area to see how your transfer goes, but they can stick to fabric, they can stick to pots, they can stick to most smooth surfaces, and you just want to make sure that you do seal them when you're done. I will be sealing this with Rust-Oleum's clear satin sealer. I want this to have a little bit of a shine, and that will be enough to protect it. And you'll still be able to use this as a scale in the kitchen, and you'll still be able to carefully wipe off any spills. And here are our finished scales. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I feel like it was very plain, very cold before. Now it has character, now it has charm. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. We're going to be using this frame that I thrifted for $1. My first step is to remove the backing and the glass, and I'm going to then be using some artist paper, and I'm going to pull that out of the book. And I've got the insert from the frame, so I know how big of an area that I have to work with, so I'm going to use this. I'm tracing around the outside, and then I'm going to trim the paper to size. Next, I'm going to be using the new Melange Paint Inlay. This has 8 pages of so many beautiful French country designs. This is perfect if you have not tried inlays before, because there is lots of little projects that you can do, and you can spread this over so many projects, guys. I absolutely adore this. I've already done a project using one of the designs from the inlay, so make sure you check out the 2023 spring release playlist if you'd like to see that. For this project, I'm going to be using this lovely rooster artwork. As soon as I saw this, I started hunting for suitable frames. So as you can see, we're not going to get the whole image, but we're going to get most of it. So I'm going to apply a coat of Dixie Belle's drop cloth chalk mineral paint to my artist paper. I want this as a base so that my paint doesn't sink in as quickly as it might if I was doing this straight on the paper, because you need your paint to be wet for a paint inlay to work. When the first coat of paint is dry, I'm coming in with another coat of paint. I'm going a little bit thicker here because I need enough so that my paint inlay will be able to have the image transferred. So I'm working my way across the paper. This is an older paint, so you will see me picking out a few dried bits and pieces, but I don't like to waste anything, so I'm using this today. So I'm going to apply it to the whole thing, and again, I need that paint to be wet, so I am working as quickly as I can. It's a hot day, and I want to get this whole thing covered and my paint inlay down before this coat dries. Now that I have enough paint, I'm going to place my paint inlay design side down. The grid should be facing up at you. I'm pressing it into my wet paint, smoothing it with my fingers, and then I'm going to grab a brayer and I'm going to use that to apply some pressure to make sure that I've got good contact. So I'm going to work my way across the paper and make sure that I haven't missed any areas. I'm then going to grab my water mister bottle and I'm going to mist the entire surface thoroughly. This is going to help activate the paint in the inlay, and then I am grabbing my brayer again and very carefully going over the top one last time. Once my paint inlay is dry, it's had about 30 minutes to dry, it's a hot day, I'm going to mist the whole thing, and then I'm going to give it 1 minute for the water to sit. If you have any resistance, you need to come back in with the mister, and then I'm going to very carefully and slowly pull my inlay away. Now you want to be careful here not to rip it, because you will get another use, possibly even another 2 uses out of this, so you definitely want to be careful. If you do not have a water mister, that's fine, just use a damp cloth. So I'm going to set this paint inlay off to the side to dry, and then I am going to come in with some of Dixie Belle's Tobacco Road. I've watered it down, and I am actually going to be flicking bits of the Tobacco Road onto my paper. I want to give this a bit more of an aged appearance. Now ordinarily you would want to then seal your paint inlay, but this is going to be behind glass, so I'm not worried about that. So I will not be sealing mine today. If you need to seal it, you can use a spray clear coat to do that. While this is drying, I'm going to grab my olive Crest mould and my Jovi air dry clay and start work on the frame. I'm dusting my mould with cornstarch, and then I'm working the clay into the scroll designs there. I'm going to be casting 8 of those, 4 of each of the different directions, and they're going to go in the corners. And then I'm also going to be doing a few other elements. I really want to give this frame more of an ornate feel. When you're using clay, you'll want to roll it into a shape similar to the casting that you want to make, and you're going to then press it into the molds. IOD molds have a micro rim, which makes it very easy for you to get a nice clean edge. So I use my thumb and I push away from the mold, and I find that the easiest way to work the clay in. And then I like to either use gravity to help me get it out, or I pull the mold and I pull the castings out. If you haven't used molds before, the Olive Crest mold is a really great one to start with because of all the elements that you get in it. And I especially keep my eye out for cheap frames in the thrift stores so that I can do just this sort of a project. Next, I'm going to use a strong wood glue to glue all of my castings down. There's no right or wrong way to arrange your molds when you're doing a project like this, but I just tried to envision what those old French frames or ornate mirrors looked like, and I tried to have some symmetry with the same molds on either side. When I have all of my castings glued down, I'll use a wet wipe to clean off the glue. Next, I'm going to do 2 coats of Dixie Belle's Cactus Silk Mineral Paint. This is a beautiful green tone, and I'm going to be doing some layering here. So green is not going to be the predominant color here. I just want it peeking through. So I'm going to paint very carefully over my molds because even though they've been setting for quite a while, I don't want to accidentally ruin any of the details. So I am being very gentle, and I am using a synthetic brush. Once this has had a few hours to dry, I'm going to come in with Dixie Belle's Drop Cloth Chalk Mineral Paint, and at first I'm just brushing over the top of the molds, and then I am working the paint around the rest of the frame. I still want to see peaks of that green showing through, but it will take 2 coats of me to get the desired look. When this coat's dry, I am going to seal the entire thing with Dixie Belle's Gloss Clear Coat. Next, I'm going to give this more of an antiqued look with some Tobacco Road Voodoo Gel Stain. I've watered it down a bit, and then I am very carefully applying it, and I'm using a wet wipe to wipe back a lot of the excess. I want this to sit around the castings and in some of the details. You could definitely achieve a similar look if you were to apply some brown wax or perhaps even a brown paint wash. But also remember, if this look isn't for you, you could just leave this step out. To age this up even further, I'm going to be using the Vintage Textures stamp, specifically the Crackle stamp. I'm going to be using the black permanent ink, and you can see I'm just randomly pressing the stamp on the frame. I want to give this an aged appearance, so I'm not going for a uniform look. I'm pressing it all over the frame, including some of the molds. I just love these stamps. I think that they look so authentic, and if you're someone who likes more of a vintage rustic look, this is definitely a stamp for you. Finally, I'm going to add some of Dixie Belle's Gold Gilding Wax. I've got a little bit on my finger and I'm just running my finger along some of the casting details. Now that my artwork is dry and my frame is ready, I'm going to put them back together. I'm going to carefully place the glass back in the frame, and then I am going to put the beautiful artwork that we just created using the inlay down and putting the backing on as well. And here's our finished artwork. Today is this little ceramic vase or urn. It was beautiful. I did look it up to see if it had any extra value, but it had a lot of damage. There was a lot of petals and things broken off it. So we're going to paint it. I'm going to add some of Dixie Belle's Latte limited edition fall color just to my container that I had my chocolate sea spray in before. I don't mind if it darkens up a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of sea spray to that as well. We're going to add some texture to this vase to give it a bit more of a weathered look. So I'm going to stir it really well, and then I'm going to be applying the product with a little chip brush. So I'm going to dab it and stipple it all over. Now I have already sprayed this piece with Rust-Oleum's Clear Matte Sealer. It is a little bit shiny, so that is going to help my paint to stick. I went with this latte color because I felt like it would look really good as a layer underneath, because we are going to come in with another layer of paint soon. So I always like to think of my projects in layers and think about what's going to be showing through if I'm going to be doing some distressing. So you can see I've created some lovely texture here, and I'm now going to mix up some of Fusion's Toasted Coconut milk paint. I've measured out a capful, and then I'm going to put an equal amount of water into that milk paint and stir it well. I'm then going to add a little bit of Dixie Belle's clear wax to some of the areas that I want to be able to distress back. This just really helps when it comes to doing wet distressing. It makes the job a little bit easier. And then I'm going to start applying my milk paint. I'm only going to be applying one thick coat, so I'm laying it on, and again you'll notice that I am skipping over some of that texture. You can see some of that latte showing through, and this is by design. We want it to look like that paint has chipped off over the years to reveal the layers underneath. I did have to work a little bit harder to get into some of the details of those florals, but again, I am happy for some of that latte to show through. So I'm going to work my way around until I've painted the entire piece. Before my paint has completely dried, I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm going to speed up that drying process. I want to be able to achieve some texture here, some cracking, and milk paint is perfect for this sort of a technique, and speeding up that drying process really helps to achieve that wonderfully aged chippy look. I'll then do some wet distressing on some of the details and seal with easy peasy spray wax. And here's a look at our finished project. I love how this turned out. It is a completely refreshed look for this piece, and now you don't even notice that those little petals have come away. Let me know what you think of this project in the comments. For my second project, I'm going to be working on this rooster statue. Now I loved the shape and the details, but it was a little bit drab, so we are going to give it a makeover. I'm first of all going to prime my surface with Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer. Again, this is going to help my paint to stick, but it's also going to block out the other colors and give me a really great base to work with. I'm applying the primer with a soft chip brush, and I'm doing it in a dabbing and stippling motion. That way I won't have any brush strokes, and I am going to be doing 2 coats and then letting them dry. Next, I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Pitch Black Chalk Paint. I am only going to be applying one coat. It's very highly pigmented. I'm applying the paint in the same dabbing and stippling motion so that we don't get any brush strokes. And this paint is going to be great underneath the metallic that we're going to be using next. Once the pitch black chalk paint was completely dry, I took out Paint Couture's Copper Luxe Metallic. I have not used this beautiful color before, so I am very excited to try it out today. I am going to be dabbing and stippling this lovely metallic over the top of the black, and I am not needing full coverage here, but I will tell you that it's deceptive. When I was first putting it on, I didn't think it was as highly pigmented as I thought, but as it dried, it definitely filled in. So it's looking great over the top of that black, and I did then let it dry, and here's what it looks like when you come in with just one coat. As you can see, it did actually cover a lot better than I thought it was, and this would actually look great just as is, but I want to hide a little bit more of that black, and so I'm going to come in with a light second coat. I'm not going to hit all areas, and I'm not going very heavy. I want to create some patina, so I'm going to take Paint Couture's Mermaid Kiss Perfect Pigments. So this is a powdered form. It's a lovely bluey green tone. I'm going to put a little bit out into a plastic container, and I want to give it a little bit more of a darker blue tint. So I also grabbed Age Cafe Perfect Pigments by Paint Couture, and I'm going to put just a little bit of that brown toned pigment in with my Mermaid Kiss. I'm then going to use Paint Couture's Pigment Medium, and I'm just putting a little bit of that in and then stirring it really well. I'm then going to start applying the lovely color that we've created there with a paintbrush. I'm just really working it into the grooves of the rooster statue. And this is a water-based product, so I'm now going to come in with my mister, and I'm going to mist that lovely blue tone, and it's actually going to start running, and it's going to give us a bit more of an aged copper patina look. So I'm going to continue repeating those steps, adding that lovely pigment that we created, watering it down a little bit, and just working my way around, because I definitely want this to have more of a vintage aged feel. I'm also dabbing off some of the excess with a paper towel. And then something else that I did was that I actually took the pigments, the Mermaid Kiss pigments powder, got a little bit on my finger, and now I'm just going to dab it over the top of the wet pigment medium that we've already added, so it's going to stick to that. But as you can see, it is a lot brighter, and it definitely looks like that lovely blue-green patina that we love to see on copper and bronze. So I'm just going to continue to add the mixture that we created, and also the actual powdered form of the Mermaid Kiss pigments. I'm just going to work my way around that rooster, adding it wherever I feel that that natural patina would occur. Now, if this was too much for you, obviously you could leave this step out, or maybe you wanted to go in a different direction and you wanted to bring in a dark glaze or a dark wax. Just depends what look you're after. If I inspire you to try any of these Paint Couture products, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. I'll put it in the description and on the screen. I just get a little thank you from Paint Couture in return. So obviously whatever I have done on one side, I am going to be repeating on the other side of our rooster statue. And here's a look at our finished copper rooster statue. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I've never used Paint Couture's copper before, but it's definitely a new favorite, and that Mermaid Kiss Perfect Pigments has really made all the difference in creating a patina. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Second project is this wooden rolling pin. It cannot be used in the kitchen. It has lots of dents and things in it, so it's not food safe. So we're going to turn it into a decor piece. First, I'm going to give it a good clean, and then I'm grabbing that Tobacco Road gel stain again, and I am going to stain the entire rolling pin. And I just love how the stain has settled into all of the imperfections and aged look of this rolling pin. It is perfect. So before I stain any raw wood pieces, I do tend to mist it with a mister so that the stain is able to be absorbed more evenly. I also like to add a little bit of water to my water-based gel stains. When that's dry, I'm going to come in with Dixie Belle's Cashmere Limited Edition Chalk Mineral Paint. This is a beautiful yellow toned cream, and I'm just applying it to each of the handles. And you can see I'm not being super careful to get full coverage. I actually love the chippy look that the original texture is showing here. I'll be doing 2 coats of this on each of the handles. Next, I'm going to be using IOD's new La Campagne stamp. This is 2 pages of beautiful French country inspired stamps. There are so many possibilities here. It's hard to pick which one to use. I thought about the sweet little lamb, and then I also thought about the little mother hen with her chickens, and I was just trying to decide between the two. In the end, I decided on the mother hen, so you can see I am cutting out the stamp. I do prefer to do that, but I am going to have to curve this around a curved surface, so I have taken it off the backing, and now I'm using IOD's permanent ink to ink up my stamp. Once I have enough of the black ink on my stamp, I am going to tidy up any areas where I got ink where I shouldn't, including my fingers, because I will get that on my project if I don't do that. Now I'm going to very carefully turn my stamp over, and I'm going to position it in the center, and I'm just going to curve the stamp around, and once I've pressed down, I am holding it in place and just distributing pressure over the entire stamp surface to make sure that I get a good impression. It's really important that once you've pressed down that you do not shift or move your stamp, or it will get smudged. Next, I'm going to carefully pull my stamp away, and as you can see, we've got a pretty good image there. Did go a little bit heavy in one area, but that's fine. I am going to clean off that stamp, and then now I'm going to add some more of her little chicks. These are very fine pieces, but I still need to curve it around a curved surface, so I am going to do it without the backing, and I'm going to carefully press this little chick down, and I am applying some pressure, and I did notice that when I pulled it away there was a little bit missing, but that's okay. I just went back in, lined it up, and pressed it in the area I missed and managed to fix it. I'm going to repeat the same process with the other little chick on the other side. Once I'm finished, I'm going to make sure that all my stamps are clean, and I'm going to allow this to dry. I want to give this more of a weathered look, so I'm coming in with some medium grit sandpaper, and I'm working my way around the handles of the rolling pin and just giving it a bit of a distressed look here. So I'm going to do that to each of the handles, and then I am also going to lightly distress the center of the rolling pin, make the stamps look a little bit more aged as well. And I'll then use a wet wipe to wipe off the dust. Finally, I'm going to seal the whole rolling pin with gloss clear coat. And here's our finished rolling pin. I really enjoyed doing this project. I think it's great to take something that would otherwise be discarded and turn it into beautiful kitchen decor. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video collection, and if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.